My billable rate was $125 an hour. Okay. Now, if you had have asked me, well, how did you come to that? How did you get to $125 an hour? I couldn't tell you. I'll probably say, I don't know.
You just pulled it out the air.
My friend charges that, or I Googled it, or whatever. It sounds like what most consultants make. That is the truth. Fast forward, I go to the federal government, right? I get 8A certified. It's time for me to price my first contract. And that is where the rude awakening happened for me. Because the government, it's not that they don't want to pay you $125 an hour or whatever your billable rate is for the contract. They just want you to explain to them, how did you get there?
Absolutely.
How did you get from $0 to $125?
Yes.
That's all we want to know. And that's when I first understood how much money I was leaving on the table.
Yes. All right. I want to welcome my bootstrappers to another episode of Bootstrapped Millionaire. And on this episode, we have none other than my friend, my sis, Karen Swain.
Yes.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you, big brother Tim.
Hey, listen, well, I'm very happy to have you on the show. Do you know that you're actually the first female on the Bootstrapped Millionaire show?
Really?
That's right. Yeah. First
I feel honored.
Yes, it is an honor. It is an honor.
honored.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm excited because I know on this show, we're going to get into discussions around government contracting and things of that nature. So we'll definitely dive in that. But to start, let's first start by helping my bootstrappers know who you are. You know, who is Karen Swain?
Sure. So Karen Swain, I am the owner of Excelis. And yes, we are federal contractors or government contractors. Been in the Atlanta area for about 30 years. And prior to moving here, I went to Florida A&M University.
Rattler.
Yes, I'm a rattler, and received my accounting degree there. And then I moved to Atlanta after I graduated, and so I've been here ever since. Got here in about 1994. Went back to graduate school, got an MBA, and then I moved into management consulting. So a lot of people ask me, well, how did you get the government contracting? I really got to government contracting through the consulting door. So when I first went into management consulting, I went to IBM first, and then I went to Bearing Point, which is a big consulting firm. And then I finished the last few years at Deloitte. And it was at that point the shift happened in my career when I decided that I didn't really want to be a partner in the firm. I really wanted my own consulting firm. I always had an entrepreneurial drive from a little girl. I knew I was going to have my own business. I just didn't know what it was. And Excelis is not my first entrepreneurial venture, right? I've done network marketing.
Yeah.
I've done a number of things, but this is the first company that I've grown from the ground up. And so I took the plunge. A lot of people was like, "You're resigning from Deloitte? Who leaves Deloitte?" But I knew it was time, right? And so I left, and I hadn't looked back. And so I'm sure you've got some more questions for me.
Yeah, so because knowing your story, you left Deloitte at a time when you were actually making a lot of money. I think you said you were well over six figures,
Yeah.
and you decided to walk away from a six-figure income and to go into entrepreneurship. That had to be a hard choice to make, right?
Yeah, it was. It was a hard choice. It was a risky choice more than anything. But that's what entrepreneurship is. It's risk. I tell anybody, if you are looking to make money as an entrepreneur, and I'm talking about being able to feed yourself and feed other families, other people, you got to be a risk taker. And so I was looking beyond six figures. If we sit down and do the math and determine how far does $150,000 take you, it's not going to take you too far if you want a certain lifestyle and want to be able to, take care of your family and, just maintain whatever is important to you in life, right? But for me, it was bigger than just me. It's always been. Anybody who's in my inner circle know that I'm a giver. You know,
Yeah.
I like to not only take care of myself, but I like to make sure other people, get an opportunity if I can create that. And so I knew the only way for me to do that was for me to own my own contracts, was for me to get myself in a position that I can create internships for students in college, like I've done, that I can give scholarships if I wanted to. And so the only way you do that, you got to own your own business.
Correct. Yeah.
So that's what really drove me there.
So why government contracting?
Ooh, good question. So I was introduced to government contracting by a mentor at the time, and I didn't know much about it. When I left Deloitte, I started out as an independent contractor, just what people call 1099. And I did that for probably about 6 years. And during that 6 year window, and this is from about 2011 to 2016, and I want your audience to really listen to these dates because I think it's very important that people understand the reality. And that's all I talk about reality. I am not, going to sell you, anything other than my story, right? So from about 2011 to 2016, I was an independent contractor. And during that time, I started getting certified on the local level, participating in county and city level small business programs because every level of government has small business program participation.
Correct.
City and county, state, and of course, federal. And so I first started with DeKalb County, which is, I think, our third largest county in the state of Georgia, predominantly African American. City of Atlanta, Clayton County. These are, at the local municipality level. And what that means is I got certified, went up to the county procurement department, tried to get an understanding of what the criteria were in order to get certified as a small business enterprise or a local small business enterprise or whatever the name of your particular program is. And so I did that and I started getting on teams as a partner, a teaming partner, because at the time, DeKalb County was implementing, Oracle. And you and I both know, for those of you all watching that are in technology, you guys know
Yep.
the names of these different software. And so I won a couple of contracts from being on the right team that won. And so when I was in the middle of that process, I quickly understood that in order for me to duplicate myself, this is where the turning point for me came. Because I think around 2016, I was hovering at around 340 something thousand a year.
This was just you. This is
Just
you.
me.
You were the only resource.
I was the only resource. I was farming myself out. So I'm on a contract myself. And then I won a couple of contracts and I had other people on those. So when you add my salary up plus, what they were making, it was, like mid threes.
Okay.
I remember my last 2016 tax return was about that. And I said, okay, so in order for me to get to the $500,000 mark and the million mark and on up, I need 2 of Karen's. Well, it's only 1 of me.
Correct.
I need 3 of Karen's. So that's when I started really listening to mentors, people who were making the kind of money that I wanted to make. And so someone introduced me, again, a mentor, to the federal government and shared the 8A program with me. And for those of your listeners, for your listeners that are watching this, the 8A program, that's the number 8, small letter A. This is a small business program that's administered by the SBA. And when I say administer, means you have to go through the SBA, the Small Business Administration, in order to get certified. And in that program, you are allowed to receive non-competitive contracts, or what we call sole source contracts, up to $4 million with no competition. When that information was shared with me, I said, honey, sign me up. Where do we sign on the dotted line? Right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So that's what led me to government contracting, and kind of the rest is history. Yeah.
So let me ask you: do you think if you would have not gone into the federal side, particularly through the 8A program, do you think that you could have grown your business with just local government to the point where you have grown it today?
No.
All right.
No. Here's what I say to anyone that's looking to make a shift or a transition or increase your revenue. You got to look at your customer base.
Right.
Okay. I always say this: if you want to do business, you're laughing. If you want to do business and you want to increase your revenue, you must do business with the customer that is spending millions.
Yes.
And I'm talking, they spending millions all the time.
Absolutely.
Like it never stops. You want that kind of customer.
Yes.
Okay? Because you're going to only earn as much as your customer has to spend.
Correct.
That's just the reality, right? So when you're looking at the United States federal government, there is no larger customer than that. They are the largest customer, the largest buyer in the world. They buy literally everything. Everything. From cybersecurity and landscaping contracts to wigs, toupees, prosthetics, hair extensions. Everything and everything in between. So just about every small business out here probably has a product or service that the government buys.
So you're saying if I'm let's say I'm a barber.
Okay.
So as a barber or even a hairstylist, can I sell my product or service to the government?
Absolutely, you can. Yeah. You ever heard of something called FBOP, the Federal Bureau of Prisons?
Yes.
Okay. They have inmates. Those inmates need haircuts.
Correct.
You ever heard of the VA?
Yes.
Okay. The VA has the Veterans Administration. The VA has a need for wigs, toupees. Our military personnel have the same needs that non-military personnel have. They have, say, alopecia or cancer, all the things that we need, they need. And so there is a need for all of those types
So
of
what if I'm a
products.
realtor? Let's say I'm a realtor. If I'm a realtor, could I
If
sell?
you're a real estate agent, yes, you can sell your services to the government. Now, here's what I will say, and I think this is important for people to understand. Every product or service that you sell right now today, I am not going to tell you that it looks exactly like that in the federal space.
Understood.
Let's take realtors, for example, right? A real estate agent typically sells houses.
Correct.
Residential or commercial. Now, you may not come to the federal government selling houses to the government, but there is something called the General Services Administration, or GSA. They are probably they're our landlord.
Yes.
For lack of a better term. They handle and own all of our real estate, our federal owned real estate in this country. So all of your federal buildings, parking garages, parking decks, pretty much is owned by the General Services Administration. Our buildings have to be maintained. So there's something called facilities maintenance. All right. We actually excel us. We have a couple of facilities maintenance contracts. So a real estate agent may say, well, I don't know anything about maintaining federal buildings, but you do know about real estate. You understand the dynamics of leases and that kind of thing. So you can transition. I'm not telling you to go from real estate to cybersecurity, right?
Good point.
I'm telling you to bring on, say, a first cousin, a sibling, maybe, a complementary service. And that's important for people to understand. Don't worry about the fact that, oh, I haven't done this, or I didn't spend my corporate America career doing this. I was a project manager. Listen, you're running a business. You're growing a business. It's not about you anymore, right? It's about you when you're an independent contractor. But when you are a business owner, it's about you staying in the driver's seat, in the CEO seat, which is a very strategic role. CEOs that is a strategic mindset. Your job is to grow the business.
Correct.
Your job is to find appropriate teaming partners, to understand where the contracts are, where the funding comes from, not to be boots on the ground.
Correct.
So if it is a contract that's facilities, which for those of you who don't know what facilities maintenance is, it's maintaining federal buildings like HVAC, plumbing, electrical, fire suppression, that kind of thing. You aren't going to be the plumber.
That's correct. Right.
You're going to hire the plumber. So I don't know anything about facilities. Don't worry, you don't need to. I just need you to know to get a facilities contract.
So what you're saying is that as the business owner, you're really like executive management, right? You're
Yes.
managing the work, managing the contract, and what happens on those contracts. And
Yes.
really, it's for people that got good management skill sets.
That's right. That's exactly what you're doing. You are responsible for, the main thing you're responsible for is understanding what the requirement is of the federal government, first and foremost. What are they looking for? What are they asking for? And then determining, how can I bring a team together? Government likes teaming. This is not a one-man band situation. All right. In federal space, they like to see teaming partners. They like to see 2 companies, maybe 3 companies if needed, come together to support that federal agency's requirement. So if the government is asking in the scope of work that we need, I'll just pick on facilities since we've been talking about that. If we need a contractor to maintain a federal building that's 1 million square feet of space or what have you, then your job is to determine whether or not your company can support that alone, or do you need to bring in a teaming partner? What if this requirement calls for a union?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. And you don't have experience working with unions. You don't know the first thing about negotiating a collective bargaining agreement. You don't even know or understand what that is. Well, guess what? Why don't you look at a teaming partner that has experience, that has past performance with unions, and the 2 of you come together and go after that work. We're not going to turn the work down because you personally, as the owner of your company, don't have union experience. You see what I'm saying?
Understood.
So that's important when you're coming in to understand about teaming and partnering and subcontracting.
Understood. So how did you first find your contracts, right? Because a lot of people, when they think about government contract, they think it's complicated. And the first thing many people ask is, well, how do I find contracts? Do I run ads in the paper? Do I do digital marketing? How do you do it?
So government contracting, the way we market to these federal agencies is not in a commercial way.
Correct.
It is actually very, very simple. We market to these agencies through what is called a capability statement, which is just a 1-pager front and back resume of your company, nicely graphically designed, gives them all the information about your company. And then we also market to them through capability briefings, where we are allowed, if allowed, we are allowed to speak to a federal government representative, what we call either a program manager or a contracting officer, to be able to educate them on your company, what you've done, what we call past performance. We don't use the term in the federal space resume.
Correct.
The way we use it in commercial. We use what is called your past performance. And so you simply get yourself positioned to get in front of as many federal representatives as you can. Obviously, networking by going to conferences. The 8A program, we have our own conference, held once a year. It's where all the 8As across the country, all the federal agency representatives who are looking for 8As are there. So you network. This is a relationship-driven game, okay? This is not a game where you are looking on some database where the contracts are and you are just doing a keyword search, and you say, okay, well, I'm in project management. Let me see if there are some contracts in project management and let me bid on it and I'll win. It's not quite like that, right?
Yeah.
I am not saying that that is not a way that we go after contracts. But I will tell you, I liken it to, you know, getting on an elevator and you just so happen to be humming and Babyface walked on.
Right.
I'm not saying Babyface won't discover you from humming.
Right.
I'm just saying
Right.
that from a relationship standpoint, these relationships take time to cultivate and develop, and it's really and truly a lot of the way it. I would say the majority of the ways you're going to get contracts in the federal space is through relationships.
Right.
That's just the truth.
So hopefully we're not getting too personal, but with your first contracts
Mhm.
in the federal space, because I know your story, so I know
Sure.
how your company has done extremely well.
Mhm.
But for my bootstrappers out there who are looking at the show and they're trying to figure out, man, you know, what kind of possibilities does the government contract offer for me?
Mhm.
From your story, what was your revenue growth like? You know, from you getting into government contracting and how it evolved over the years.
Yeah. So, and I have no problem
Yeah,
telling the public this because everything
it's public.
is public record.
Yes,
And I
yeah,
want you all to know that. So when people are talking to you and telling you what they've earned and what they've made, you can
correct.
verify all of it. That's the
Mm-hmm.
beauty of government contracting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And this is important for social media because
Correct.
social media is a facade, quite
Yes.
frankly.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Some of it, not all of it. But so when I first started, my first contract was about a little over $200,000. It was an assessment that we did um, for a federal agency, and from that we got larger work. We got a full, contract to do a technology project, and we kind of grew from there. So on average, I would say for my company and probably most 8As, um, 2 to 3 million a year is
Yeah.
is what's average. If you're doing more than that, you're doing very well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, these contracts again are sole source. You don't have to compete for them. My contracts have been sole sourced. A lot of them relationship driven. But even with those relationships, guys, you've got to cultivate those.
Correct.
These are not people that I just knew.
That's right. Yeah, you're right.
Okay?
Yeah.
These are people that I met along the journey, and I've had to keep in touch with them and help them to understand what we do. And you've got to I always tell people, put yourself in the shoes of someone else. So put yourself in the shoes of, say, a contracting officer who don't really know you. Their job is to keep their job, first of all,
Yes.
right? But their job is to award contracts to companies that they know have the capabilities and will do a great job. Okay. So that means that they're taking a risk on a 1 million, 2 million, 3, $4 million contract with a company that they may not really know.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is why these relationships take time. I always say, and it's been my story, whatever I typically hunt for in 1 year, I eat off of in the second year.
That's great. Yeah.
Okay. So when we talk about what does the sales cycle look like, that's about what it looks like. Because we have to keep in mind these contracts take on average 3 to 4 months
Mm-hmm.
to even get off the ground and award. By the time the agency puts the RFP out, you've got to get the proposal responses in, you've got to get those reviewed and awarded and contract negotiated and then boots on the ground. It's not a short turnaround time.
Mm-hmm.
And typically the higher the contract value, the longer it takes.
Right.
So we have to keep that in mind. And for your listeners, the government's fiscal year ends September 30th. Okay. So that means a lot of the contracts have to be really out there. A lot of the RFPs, they need to be out there probably somewhere around June,
Mm-hmm.
July timeframe in order for the federal agency to have enough time to get that contract awarded.
Mm-hmm.
So what that means oftentimes for us as 8A firms, because again, remember I told you, that we can get sole source contracts up to $4 million
Mm-hmm.
per contract.
Mm-hmm.
That puts us in a position that if that agency has not gotten that RFP out in time to get it awarded and negotiated and all of that by September 30th, the only other way that they can get that contract awarded typically would be the 8A program.
Right.
Why? Because of the sole source component to our program. And we don't require all these signatures and all of that in order to get our contracts.
Mm-hmm.
So 8As eat typically the most around the July, August, September timeframe.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something I think that coming into the program or for those listeners that are considering government contracting, you should certainly understand and know.
So how difficult is it to get in the 8A program? Or what are the qualifications? I guess we
So it's not very difficult to get into
Mm-hmm.
the 8A program. I mean, you guys can Google 8A SBA, and it'll take you to the SBA's website, and you can see the checklist of information that you need. But you need tax returns.
Mm-hmm.
You need bank statements. The government is looking, the SBA in particular, is looking for you to be 100% in your business.
Mm-hmm.
They're not looking for W-2 income. So for those individuals that are still in corporate America and you're doing sort of a side hustle thing,
Mm-hmm.
at some point you got to do what I call get off the titty.
Right.
And that's
Right.
basically you've got to cut the W-2.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
what I tell folks is, and I'm giving y'all some game. This turned into a master class, bro.
That's what we want. That's what we want.
But what I tell folks is the best strategy that worked for me is to step down in this order.
Mm-hmm.
Your W-2 employee, you step down and move into a 1099 situation
Mm-hmm.
as an independent contractor. Now you are just working for yourself, so that now you're getting clean revenue straight into the tax ID number.
So you basically 1099 for the company that you own. So
That
your
you
own,
own.
yeah, your own company.
Yep.
Yeah.
So while you're a W-2,
Mm-hmm.
go ahead and start your LLC, whatever legal entity you want to start.
Mm-hmm.
Start that. Then step down. Find you a 1099 situation. Okay. And for most industries, 1099 is an option. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Being an independent contractor for most industries. So start the network, with recruiters, other colleagues that have done it in your industry, and get into a 1099. Decide when you're going to turn in your resignation, and don't look back.
Do you think it's wise to try to go into that 1099 situation with another government contractor? Meaning, like, for example, if you offered your services to another prime contractor?
Not necessarily. You can go into a 1099 just working for yourself. It could be for a prime contractor.
Mm-hmm.
It can be for a commercial company.
Yep.
We're looking for clean revenue in the business.
Okay.
However you get it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So you do that for a couple of years. File your tax returns in the business so that the SBA, when they get ready to look at you, they can see that you have 100% of your revenue in your tax ID number.
Mm-hmm.
Now, here's the thing that 1099s need to take into consideration. When the SBA is looking at your applications, they are looking for what they call a fit. Part of that fit is they don't want to see greater than about 60% or so of your revenue coming from one customer.
That's correct. That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so think about what most 1099s have. One customer.
One customer.
Because it's just you. You're billing to one customer.
Yeah.
So it's kind of important when you get into a 1099 to first secure yourself, feed yourself. Then you want to start looking at getting another 1099 contract and put another body on that. Put another person on that. Okay. You want to go corp to corp. That means that when you get ready to sign your paperwork, your company is who's on that paperwork for that contract. And then you're going to put a person, when I say a body, put a person on that contract to bill for that, now you've got 2 contracts. So all of your revenue is not coming from one contract. And this puts you in a position anyway to get ready for federal,
Correct.
right? Again, you got to own your own contracts. And from there, then when you get ready to move into the application process for the 8A, you're able to check off those boxes. You've got your revenue, you've got, your tax returns that you filed, bank statements, resume, all those things that the SBA is looking for. But here's the deal. You don't want to really go into the 8A program too early. There is such a thing. You know why I'm telling you this? Because that's what I did.
You think you went in too early?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Went in too early, not knowing what I was doing.
So Karen, why is it important that you don't go into the 8A program too early?
Oh, that's a good one. So the reason for that is because there are 4 small business certifications in the federal government at the federal level. Okay. And let me talk about that plus the state certifications because people get that mixed up.
Okay.
All right. So first, and I'm going to get to your question.
That's good. Okay.
So on the federal level, the 4 certifications for small businesses are the 8A that I've talked about, the WOSB, which is the woman-owned small business, the SDVOSB, which is the service disabled veteran-owned small business, and what we call the hub zone, which is a historically underutilized business. That's a business that's located in a low socioeconomic zip code, right? And you can, contact your local government to find out where the hub zones are in your city. Of those 4, the 8A certification is the only one with a time limit. It's only 9 years.
So the other ones don't have a time limit?
They don't. Once you get certified, you're certified.
Yes.
You have to keep your certification up and all that, but the 8A has a time limit. So, and what that means is after the 9 years in the program, then you no longer are an 8A firm. You graduate out and you are no longer eligible to receive sole source contracts.
Now, do the other programs allow you to have sole source contracts?
They do. Yes, you can receive sole source contracts. They work a bit different from the 8A. There's something called the rule of 2 that has to be followed.
That's correct. Okay.
Which means that the federal agency, that contracting officer or representative has to find at least 2 other firms to bid on this contract. Whereas the 8A contract vehicle, you don't have to do that.
So just one
It's
firm
truly sole source
that can just basically award the contract to you because you 8A.
Yes.
Let's take a step back though and help the audience understand who are the type of companies that can qualify for the 8A program, because I think that's important to know. And I'm glad that you talked about the other set asides because the other set asides are either the service-enabled veterans. That set aside is just for veterans.
Right.
Woman owned is just for women.
Just for women.
And then hub zone is just for those businesses that are located in those historically underutilized areas.
Correct.
What makes up the demographics of an 8A, a company that can get into the 8A program?
So the first criteria, or one of several criteria in order to qualify as an 8A right now, well, I'll say this, it's the way it used to be.
Used to be, yeah.
You had to be what we consider disadvantaged as a small business.
And that's a good point. And I want people to understand this. And I know because the 8.8 rules have changed.
They have.
They have changed as a result of the change in affirmative action,
That's
right? So I think that's important for people to know.
Yes.
Let's take a step back and talk about what it used to be, because it's important to know, because I know there's a lot of businesses that have become very successful as a result of being the 8A program.
Yes.
There are a lot of, David Stewart, who is he's the chairman now of Worldwide Technology.
Yeah.
That company started out as an 8A.
Yep.
Reverend Jesse Jackson had companies that started out that was in the 8A program.
Yeah.
I mean, myself personally have benefited from it, right?
Absolutely.
So the rules have changed, but talk about how it used to be, and then we'll fast forward to where we are today.
Okay. So the way it used to be, when we talk about used to be, we're talking about as recent as summer of 2023.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay, that's how
That's recent.
we're talking
Yes.
about. So it used to be that you had to qualify as being first disadvantaged, and that means you had to your race had to be either
Yes.
African American, Hispanic, Native American, Asian. You have to be
Mm-hmm.
prove that you were in fact from that race, and then you have to qualify with certain income. Your personal net worth had to be below a certain dollar amount, and that kind of thing. The main thing was it was a a race based program. Well, last year,
Mm-hmm.
2023, around the summertime or so, um, there was a lawsuit filed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and you guys can look this up.
Yep.
Through searching, but there was a lawsuit filed, and as a result of the lawsuit basically said that it is, illegal, or I don't know if legal is the right term, to say that someone is disadvantaged for a program entry solely based upon
Yeah.
race.
And for the audience to understand, that lawsuit was filed by I think it was a Caucasian woman. Caucasian woman
Mhm.
filed the lawsuit.
Right. I think it was in the state of Tennessee.
That's correct, in the state of Tennessee, because she felt that she was discriminated for for not having the opportunity to get a particular contract.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
And that's what really kind of created the whole push for what we have today.
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct. And so what it put the SBA in a position to do was to revisit the language of the way their rules read. And so as a result, today, the program is no longer a race-based program, or
Yeah.
the criteria or the qualifications is no longer based upon you being disadvantaged. Now you have to prove that you have been discriminated against.
Yes.
Okay. So in order to qualify now for the 8A program, a discrimination narrative has to be written. And that narrative has to prove that you have been discriminated against based upon whatever you feel. We're not saying that the SBA is going to automatically approve you.
Yes.
But if you feel that you are white, black, brown, purple, it doesn't matter what your color is, or if you have a disability, or whatever the issue is, if you can write the narrative and prove that you've been discriminated and it's widespread discrimination based upon this issue, then you could be considered and led into the 8A program. And that's the main difference. That is the result of what the downstream effects of the reversal of affirmative action is having on programs that were historically designed and developed for minority small businesses to get a seat at the table, to sort of level the playing field. And so the 8A program is no different. At the state level, the minority business enterprise, the disadvantaged business enterprise, MBE and DBE programs, they also are being closely looked at. So when we talk about the importance of this next administration, I cannot stress to your listeners enough. When we make certain decisions at the polls, they have downstream effects on our livelihoods.
Absolutely.
Especially small businesses, minority-owned small businesses in this country. They have downstream effects on us being able to provide opportunities for people to work.
Absolutely.
Opportunities for our young kids in college to intern. Because why? They threaten us being able to keep our doors open. So that is that's the downside of the reversal of affirmative action.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate because you're right. The 8A program was specifically designed to be able to give minorities a seat at the table.
Yes.
Because you got the people, I hope people understand that the government, like you said earlier, is the biggest customer on the planet.
Yep.
And we didn't, until that program was there, we never had a seat at the table. And many of us, small minority owned businesses, would never be able to get our revenue to the point where some of us have gotten our revenues at the point.
Absolutely.
Getting contracts with just corporations, right? Because a lot of the corporations are not going to give you, they would not allow you to even participate in $4 million contracts.
Yeah, and another kind of difference that I always talk about is the difference in, say, commercial organizations doing business with minority-owned small businesses because it's sort of the right thing to do, as opposed to federal agencies doing business with those same minority-owned small businesses because it is the legal thing to do. It was the legal thing, right? You don't have a choice.
Yes.
You have to do it. I like to do business with a customer who's forced to do business with me.
Correct.
As opposed to one where it's just sort of the right thing to do, or it's popular at the time, or there's some sort of social impact that has happened or caused you to now want to increase your participation with small businesses because of something that has happened in society, right? That's oftentimes when you see an uptick from the commercial side on doing more business with us.
Well, if you think about what's happening now with what is called DEI, right?
Yeah.
So with DEI being taken away, what now gives major corporations the incentive to do business with minority businesses now? None.
It doesn't. And the other thing I want to make sure we clear up too are the certifications. So a lot of people ask me about something called the National Minority Supplier Development Council, or NMSDC. The National Minority Supplier Development Council is a organization that you can get your MBE and DBE certifications through.
Yes.
Okay. However, the NMSDC, those certifications are to do business with commercial companies.
Yes.
Okay. So I want to make sure we clear that up. Those certifications are not, getting your certifications through NMSDC would not allow you to do business at the state level.
That's correct.
You do have to go through the state level Department of Transportation for DBE, and then Department of Administration or Department of General Services for the MBE certifications. All right, so people get that kind of confused. They'll say, well, I'm certified through NMSDC. Okay, great. That means that you can do business with commercial companies who are looking to do business with certified minority and disadvantaged business enterprises. However, if the state of California, for example, has a contract and they have mandatory small business participation goals where they are requiring 20% of a contract that must be spent with MBEs or DBEs, they are looking for certified MBEs and DBEs that have gotten their certifications through the Department of Transportation for DBEs, or the Department, again, of General Services or Department of Administration for the MBE. Two different.
Yes.
Okay?
Two different. Yeah.
So that's why, as a business owner, you need to understand and know, well, what level do I want to do business on? What level do I want, to play in as far as my customer? Do I want to, play in the commercial space? Do I want to play in the state space? Do I want to play on the federal, in the federal space? So all of these become very important before you start signing up, getting certifications.
And I personally feel that as a small business, particularly if you're a minority-owned small business, I say it a lot. I feel that you should be doing business with the federal government.
Absolutely.
I've tried to do business with corporations as well as state and local, and you got to keep in mind the hierarchy. State and local get their money from the feds.
Yes.
So why not just go straight to
Right.
the plug, right? I
Mhm.
mean,
All
straight
those
to
funds trickle down.
all the funds trickle down.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let me ask you though, in doing business with the federal government, do you think that has actually made you a better business owner and really helped shape your business into being a much better business?
Absolutely. 1000%.
Why is that? Why
So
is
let me
that?
give you a good example. When I was an independent contractor,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember it so clear, um, when I got my first contract as an
Mm-hmm.
independent, it's a 1099 here in Atlanta with a pretty large company. I remember my billable rate. My billable rate was $125 an hour. Okay. Now, if you had have asked me, well, how did you come to that? How did you get to $125 an hour? I couldn't tell you. I'll probably say, I don't know.
You just pulled it out of the air.
My friend charges that, or I Googled it, or whatever. It sounds like what most consultants make. That is the truth. Fast forward, I go to the federal government, right? I get 8A certified. It's time for me to price my first contract.
Mm-hmm.
And that is where the rude awakening happened for me.
Mm-hmm.
Because the government, it's not that they don't want to pay you $125 an hour or whatever your billable rate is for the contract. They just want you to explain to them, how did you get there?
Absolutely.
How did you get from $0 to 125?
Yes.
That's all we want to know. And that's when I first understood how much money I was leaving on the table.
Yes.
Right? Because the government pays for your expenses. They know that as a business owner, you have overhead, you have general administrative expenses, you have fringe benefits that you have to pay employees, health care,
Mm-hmm.
and all of that. And they
Mm-hmm.
pay for all of that.
Mm-hmm.
But they just want to know,
How
how
did you
did you
come
get
through?
there? Right?
Yeah.
The whole thing about government contracting is fair and transparency. We, you and me, all of us out here, taxpayers, we are paying for these contracts.
Correct.
The general public needs to know, are you awarding this contract to this company because they are the best company to do the job? Or is it because it's your friend?
Right. Right. Yeah.
Right? Or someone that's taking you out to eat
Mm-hmm.
a few times.
Mm-hmm.
So they want to make sure that everything is fair and transparent, which is why they ask you sometimes to provide a cost analysis to tell us and determine, how did you come up with your price?
Mm-hmm.
And that is when I understood. So I tell anybody, if you want to learn how to be a big girl, a big boy in business,
Mm-hmm.
come to the federal space.
Yes.
Because they will force you to price correctly.
And in you being forced, well, I wouldn't call it forced, but that's again, the government wants to know how you came up with your pricing, right? They wanted transparency.
It's good business, right?
And you and I talked about this before. That actually helped you to understand where you were leaving money on the table,
Yes,
right?
yes.
I mean, it really helped you more than, it being a burden. It actually helped you. Talk to me about how that piece right there helped you grow your business.
Right. So what it did, it forced me to get proper accounting in place.
Yes.
And that's the thing that as an independent, most independent contractors, when we kind of jump out of corporate America or we start our own businesses, we're trying to bootstrap everything.
Mm-hmm.
We're trying to do it ourselves or find us a piece of software or we may have an accountant that's just doing our taxes.
Mm-hmm.
That's all our accountant does. They just do our taxes.
Yeah.
Right? But we're not really keeping up with our expenses. We're not categorizing our expenses. We don't really know the difference between what we're paying for fringe versus overhead versus G&A or general administrative, and all those different, what we call indirect cost buckets that drive your billable rate, right? And what I mean by that is you pay an employee $50 an hour.
Okay.
Okay. Well, it costs for you to maintain that employee.
Yes, it does.
You've got to pay that employee. So you've got payroll expenses. If they're a W-2 employee to your company, you've got to provide some type of health care benefit package for them. You have to have a place for that employee to work. That employee may have a laptop, you have overhead, you have lights that that employee has to sit in a building and run the electricity. So all of your expenses are wrapped into that billable rate, which is what we call a fully loaded rate. You have to load that $50 an hour with all of your expenses. So your fully loaded rate may look closer to, say, $100 an hour, okay, or $90 an hour, because that extra $40 or $50 an hour that you're making, that we call profit, is really not profit. Profit is baked in there, but it's to cover your indirect costs. Those costs that you incur in order for that person to get up and go to work on your behalf, your company's behalf, and do a good job every single day. And you have to learn that.
Yeah, and I think maybe one day we'll really dive deep into that, because I think that is very important, not only for government contractors, but for any small business.
That's right.
Because if you know how to price and you can explain your pricing, even any customer will understand that you need G&A, general administrative expenses, and all those kind of things.
Right.
So I was certainly, maybe one day we could do a live or something like that to dive deeper into that.
Yeah, because I think it helps small businesses that are out there. I mean, that's the great thing about shows like this show, Tim, that where you're providing education and folks are able to get an understanding enough for them to go out and say, let me seek more information.
Absolutely.
You are not about to become an expert listening to people's podcasts. Okay.
No, you're not.
You're not going. So trying to get free information from a bunch of webinars and podcasts, this gives you nuggets. This gives you enough information to say, let me go and get some professional help, or let me dive deeper into whatever it is that I just gained knowledge on. So we can certainly do that.
So what has been the biggest challenge that you've faced in being a government contractor?
I would say for me, it's not really understanding what I was doing from the beginning, not coming into this space with a real 9-year strategy. You need a strategy when you come into this 8A program, how you're going to enter in
and how you're
going to exit out. And that drives how you go after contracts, the size of them, what kinds of contracts, whether you're going after them yourself, whether you're starting to team with larger primes. It drives all of those decisions. And when you don't have that in place, you have to play catch up about halfway in, once the light bulb comes on for you and you realize what you're really doing.
Yeah.
And for me, that realistically, that was about 2 years ago. Is when I really, really realized what I was doing, but I had wasted 3 or 4 years already. And I'm not saying wasted because I made money, but I'm saying that the lesson learned for me is to never jump into something like this unprepared. So that's just the reality. It's called being unprepared.
So what you're really saying is, really it boils down to just having a plan.
Having a plan.
Having not just a business plan, but a strategic plan.
A strategic plan, because you want to know, if I ask you as a CEO, the owner of your company, what does the end state look like for you?
That's great. That's a good point.
You know what I'm looking for you to tell me? I want to know first, well, what age do you want to really retire? And let's work backwards. How many kids do you have? Do you have a spouse? Do you have parents that you're going to have to take care of when you get older? Like, what does your overhead, your personal overhead, look like? How do you want to live? What lifestyle do you want to maintain? Do you want to maintain a main home and then a vacation home? Do you want your kids to go to private school, public school? All of those decision points that cost money. Then we back into, well, how much money do you really need to live? That determines how big of a business you need to grow in order to get yourself in a position to be able to fund your retirement. I mean, that's for most Americans, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to grow these businesses, feed ourselves, earn and make a decent, honest living, and be able to relax and enjoy some of the pleasures of life. That's what the most American kind of dream is, and maintain your health.
Yeah.
So how do we do that? We have to back into the money, determine what does it take to get us there. And so that means that you have to now decide, am I going after only $4 million contracts, or do I need to be going after more like $20 million contracts? And how many of those do I need a year or every 2 years? And if I am going after $20 million contracts, what circle do I need to be in now?
Yes.
Who do I need to be talking to on a regular basis? What size of contract, what kind of contract vehicles in the federal space do I need to go after? Do I need to start going after state contracts as well? Do I need to move into a little bit of commercial work and diversify the portfolio? These are all decision points. Large corporations, this is what they do.
Yes.
They have 5 and 9 year and 10-year strategic plans. Small businesses, you know why we don't do this? Most of the time we're uneducated about it.
We are.
That's probably one of the main things. The other piece is that it's just us. We're running so hard, we don't have time to stop and do this very, very important exercise that drives everything about the decisions you make for your business.
Yeah.
And so that's probably the biggest lesson learned for me, or the biggest challenge that I had is really being unprepared.
Yeah, I know. I would agree with you, because that's the same thing that happened to me. I didn't really put together a strategic plan until probably about year 4 of being in government contracting. And I definitely think that as small business owners, we must have the exit in mind.
Yes.
Now, the exit doesn't mean that you're quitting. The exit just means that how do I pivot, right? Or do I need to pivot?
Yeah.
I knew for me, my plan was never to grow my business to that, through $200 million and going after those large contracts. That was not my strategy, because my strategy was, once I get out of the 8A program, I wanted to have enough capital that I could move into doing things like private lending and things of that nature. So I already had that plan in mind, but it took me 4 years to write it down.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I totally agree with you on that. So what advice would you give someone that that's listening to this podcast, that's an aspiring entrepreneur that wants to pursue government contract? What advice would you give them as to what would be the 3 next steps you would probably tell them to do?
Okay. So I would say, and this is from lessons learned from Karen.
Yeah.
Okay. I would say the first thing that I would do before I jump into government contracting is I would find a Karen.
I'm like a mentor.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
This is not a space for you to walk in by yourself.
I agree.
It's just not. You cannot Google or YouTube or Chat GPT your way into government contracting.
No, you can't.
You really do need someone to hold your hand and bring you on in. You need somebody to take you under their wings and bring you on in. When I say take you under their wings, I mean like help you get on a contract.
Correct. That's right.
Maybe put you on one of their contracts so that you can learn as a small business. Learn as a subcontractor. So that's the first thing that I would do, is identify a Karen Swain. Okay. I'm not saying it has to be me. Someone like me that is in it. Preferably someone that is currently in government contracting. Not someone that used to do it.
Right, that's true.
And they don't do it anymore.
Yeah.
Not someone that used to work for the federal government. Someone that has been a federal contractor, and preferably they are currently still a federal contractor.
I mean, that's the only way they can help you, is by currently being a federal contractor, especially if you want to get on their contracts.
Correct.
Yeah.
The second thing that I would do is I would develop a strategic plan on exactly what you want to do, how you want to enter, and how you want to exit. And it has to be on paper. And your mentor should help you develop that plan.
I agree.
Okay? That means you have to, again, sit with yourself, sit with your spouse, understand where you want to be for retirement, what age you want to, accomplish that, and then work your way back so that we'll know what size contracts you need to be going after. If the 8A program is even a program that you need to even fool with, okay? Because I'm not saying that in order to do well in government contracting, you have to be an 8A. I mean, you can be a subcontractor
Absolutely.
and
Yes, you
do
can.
extremely well.
Yes, you can.
Right? And the third thing that I would tell you is to niche down. Okay. That is probably one of the biggest challenges for small businesses, especially myself,
Yes.
is
Yes.
because you're so hungry for work,
Yes.
you're going to take on anything that
yes.
somebody's throwing your way.
Yes.
So you're going to take on, I'll be a project manager, I'll take a cybersecurity contract, I'll take a landscaping contract, and you look up and you just got a schizophrenic business. Your business is just all over the place. And a federal agency, when they're looking at you, they can't really figure out, well, what do you do best?
What do you specialize in?
Yeah. And so that's being patient and going deep into a space rather than casting yourself wide. I use familial example. So I'll say a first cousin or a sibling. So, you may want to add a sibling service offering to what you do. That's fine. Okay. But don't start jumping out there to, service offerings that have no complementary way of marrying or matching up with what your core business is. And it's also harder to build relationships because those are two different networks or three different networks, three different types of conferences that you need to attend.
That's true.
You want to kind of stick with one or two things that you do very well, and you start building your network base and your friends and colleagues and relationships, and you start to see each other every single year or multiple times a year at different networking events, and people start to get comfortable with you being in that space. And trust the process. Trust me, business is going to come your way if you niche down. So those would be the three that I would say, again, to summarize that up. Okay. First thing, get you a Karen, get you a coach, or a mentor that's going to help bring you in, help them, get them to help you put your strategic plan in place on how you will enter government contracting and how you will exit, and niche down.
I like that.
You like that?
Oh, absolutely.
That's it.
I wish someone would have told me that
too.
when I got into government because especially the niching down.
Yeah.
Because when I first got in, I was all over the place.
Me too.
Especially after getting to 8A, you was just taking any contract that came your way.
Right.
And that's not good.
Yeah.
Right? Because in the end, particularly if you're trying to grow your business, you need to be a specialist in something. I think that's for any business.
It really is.
Right?
It really is.
I think we're in a world today where we think that we can just be a generalist. And being a generalist is not what you got to be specialized in something.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, listen, Karen, as we close, and man, this has been a great conversation, and we could probably sit here for hours.
We could
talking about this, and of course, like I said, we got to definitely do some lives together.
Yes.
To talk more in depth about some of these things, particularly the last nuggets you gave about niching down and putting together a strategic plan. So definitely, I certainly want us to do that. But how can folks connect with you online, socially? How can they connect? How can they find Karen Swain?
They can find me at I am Karen Swain. All of my social media accounts, it's the same thing. I am Karen Swain. So Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, you guys can find me there. And
you also have a virtual training program on government contracting as well too.
I have a self-paced training course that I developed during COVID because I had time, and a lot of folks just need to understand the basics about entering government contracting. My course was not designed to guarantee you a contract. No one can guarantee you a contract. So anybody that you are looking at to mentor you or to coach you or Stay away from anyone that is going to tell you that I can get you a contract, because they cannot.
Absolutely not. That's
All
right.
right. Stay away from anybody who is trying to charge you a bunch of money up front to give you information. All right. It does cost for you to be coached, for you to be trained. Okay. But you are a small business. You don't have a lot of money to spend, these tens and $20,000, $30,000, right? You should budget somewhere between, $1,000 to $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, to spend on, training and coaching and that kind of thing. But you start getting north of 10 grand, I would personally tell you, and I'm not trying to rain on any other people's parades as far as what they charge, but you've got to brace yourself because you've got more money to spend. And so you want to make sure that you get yourself in a course. But yes, I do have a course for you. It's on my website. You guys can go there and pull it down. I would highly recommend, if you know nothing about government contracting and you're serious. You are serious means you have made up in your mind that this is what you want to do, right? Because I'm not in the business of being a therapist, to convince you of anything. That's something that you need to get taken care of yourself. But if you have gotten to that point and you probably are sick and tired of corporate America, or you're just ready to move on, then yes, I would start with a course.
Yes.
Because it'll give you the fundamentals. It'll help you with terminology. This is a whole nother world. I mean, government talk is not like commercial talk.
True.
I remember the first time that I started communicating with the contracting officer, and I emailed her. And corporate America, we're used to greetings and salutations and hope all is well and all that. And I remember she emailed back and said, received.
That's it.
I was like,
right.
Did I offend her or something?
Right.
And so I quickly had to learn the brevity of, their style of communication.
Yes.
A lot of it has to do with, you have to just be very careful about transparency. You don't want anything to appear that there was too much familiarity.
That's correct.
Between a contracting officer and a vendor. That you all were, too close of friends, and because everything is about the perception of what something looks like as far as fair and transparency is concerned. And so I had to quickly get out of my feelings and just understand that. So all of those things you can pick up in, taking a course and being able to get past the basics that a mentor would appreciate if they don't have to start from scratch. Like, what is a contracting officer?
Right. Absolutely.
What is federal government? Right.
Absolutely.
So yes, I do have a course, and
Cool.
folks are free to pull that down.
Well, listen, Karen, I appreciate you for being on the show.
Yeah.
Like I said, a lot of great information, and I will encourage anyone that's listening to this podcast, go check her out on social media. I am Karen Swain.
Yep.
Her website again is iamkarenswain.com, where you can go to and get access to the course. Reach out to her, DM her, let her know if you're interested in learning more about how you can get involved in government contracting. And again, I encourage every small business owner out there.
Right.
If you're not doing business with the government, you're doing yourself a disservice.
Absolutely.
Right. And there's a lot of things that's happening in the world today. We didn't get a chance to talk about all the politics of things and unfortunately, the potential of war that is pending. And as much as we hate to say that the war is pending, for government contractors,
we do well.
The government contractors do well during those times, right? So I would encourage you, if you considering it, definitely get the resources, and hopefully this podcast has shedded some light and some inspiration to a lot of our bootstrappers out there. So again, thank you for being on the show. We look forward to having you again on the show where we can dive even deeper into all these things. And as we always say to end our show, keep bootstrapping.